Miller, and this is my life living in Leon, Nicaragua. And on a recent live stream, I was asked about where we could find areas within Nicaragua that were less prone to flooding. And some people who were looking at moving, had not lived here, were concerned about floods because they heard about this a bit, and they know that this is the tropics and it's Central America, so big rainstorms are pretty much the norm. And today's weather really brought this to mind. Just gonna turn this around. This is the middle of the afternoon. This should be a very bright time of day, and it is quite gray, quite dark, and rumbly. So we got a storm rolling in, and it made me think about some recent events. I want to talk about that and talk about how flooding in Nicaragua is going to generally, for most of you, apply to you as expats, what you need to worry about, what you need to think about, and so forth. What are the real dangers here in Nicaragua when it comes to natural disasters and water and such? So we're going to talk about that right after the bump. Recently in the news, we've had a lot of news in the region outside of Nicaragua about some violent crime and deaths happening to foreigners, to expats living in the region. And thankfully here in Nicaragua, that has not been happening here. Very much the opposite. Foreigners are incredibly safe and anything but targeted. You may be targeted for someone begging on the street for a few extra dollars, but you are not going to be targeted for violent crime. It's really not a thing here. Violent crime does exist, of course, but targeting foreigners for it does not. And even without considering that, we are among the safest countries in the Western Hemisphere. So violent crime is extremely low under any circumstances, but that does still leave other types of dangers in life that we need to worry about. And a big one here in this region involves water. So I want to talk about some recent events and how these things could, one, be perceived, and two, how it affects you, what you need to think about as an expat potentially moving into the region, or maybe as an expat who's living here and hasn't thought about these things. Before we talk about rain, I want to talk about the ocean. Just recently, in the last few weeks, we had a number of people go out into the ocean together, or I'm told it was a church group from up in the mountains or something like that. They went out and were in the ocean, and the entire group of missionaries was swept away by the riptide. The local surfers were able to save a number of people, but not all. Some have washed up since then, some have not been found. It's very important to understand that this is Central America, and this is the wild Pacific out here on the major population and most of the beach side of the country, and riptides here are intense. They're not always incredibly visible, and they are dangerous beyond belief. The number of people that we lose who naively go into the Pacific Ocean thinking that they just don't have to worry about anything, and like imagine they're in the Caribbean or something. And even there, we've recently, right, Malcolm Jamal Warner just died on the Caribbean side, where there's very little danger down in Costa Rica, where they're basically the same as us on that side, right? The Caribbean side have very similar water, and yet he was killed by a riptide there just in the last few months. And so someone so high profile with so much protection, so much knowledge, and still on the safe side, we lost recently. Imagine how dangerous it is on the Pacific side. Plus, the Pacific side has easily 10 times, maybe 100 times as many people actually in the water on any given day. The Caribbean side is essentially empty, whereas the Pacific side is essentially lightly full. Full would be really pushing the point, but a lot of people are in there. But it is very, very dangerous, and we have a regular loss of people there. However, we never hear about someone being lost out there who was acting responsibly, who knew how to swim, who was paying attention, knew what to do with riptides and so forth. But it is still an incredibly dangerous body of water. So this is something I want people to be aware of, because many people are looking at moving to the beach, and many people are looking at a very beer heavy or margarita heavy or rum heavy lifestyle out here on the beach, and that is a dangerous combination. We regularly, if you have parties on the beach, we have to have security to stop people from running drunkenly into the water, and we totally expect them not to survive if they do that, right? It's a very dangerous thing. Even when I was here in 2019 with my best friend Rachel, I had to stop her from running in San Juan del Sur, which is way safer. There's no riptide. Still had to stop her from just running into the ocean in the middle of the night after drinking, right? So it's a very common thing to have a few drinks, be on a beach, and just decide in the darkness to go into riptide-infested waters. Very, very dangerous. Are there things in the water that are super dangerous beyond the water itself? Not really. We do have a lot of rays. The getting stung is super common, but like being eaten or killed by anything except your own lack of ability to swim against a riptide, super rare. There's also heavy surf, so just be aware you can be battered around and such, but it's important to note that we do have rough water. So don't think of this as a place where you can just casually go into the water without thinking, that you can just casually leave small children to go in. Nicaraguans will often do that, and the losses here can be staggering during certain weather events and such, just from people going into the water. Many times people who don't know how to swim go into the water in large groups and then just lose members of their family because they naively think that the water is simply safe. They don't think about how deep it is. They don't know about currents. They don't know about the surf and so forth. So that's an important bit. Most expats that are moving down are like, of course we know that the water is dangerous. Oceans are super dangerous. But it's easy to imagine other regions of the Pacific coast, which are not nearly as dangerous as this one, where just like Costa Rica, these are really rough coasts. So I just want people to have that, as this is a water danger here. It is not weather-based, and it's not one to be afraid of. Right? You control this. Just don't go into the water foolishly, and you'll be perfectly safe. The water's not something to be scared of. Now, someone will mention, have we had tsunamis here? Yes, we did. In 1992, there was a major tsunami here that affected the region. We did have a large loss of life. It's very tragic, and that is why in this part of the country, every single building you find is built after 1992, and most of them built immediately after. So there's a very specific age of houses, mine included, that were built immediately in the aftermath of the tsunami. So just something to be aware of. Of course, now we have much better protections against the tsunamis. Now they know they can happen. Now they have warning systems. Now they have alarms. They have monitoring and all kinds of things. So it's really quite safe. There are marked tsunami gather points in all the beaches and so forth. So they know what to do, and they're doing that. But in 1992, they were caught by surprise. There was no warning whatsoever, and the tsunami was pretty significant. So can happen, but extremely rare. Is it something that should stop you from living on the beach? I don't think so. But is it something you should be aware of, that if you live directly at water level, you do carry this risk? You carry that risk worldwide, but some places have like never experienced a tsunami or be super hard to get. We have warnings about once or twice a year. We never really experienced anything more than a couple inches, but just in case, yes, it can happen, and we all take it very, very seriously. So anytime a tsunami warning comes out, normally we have more than 10 hours warning. We get warnings from the often at the event when it happens, so it could be coming from Russia, Korea, Japan, something like that. But generally, our main warning comes as it crosses the Pacific Monitoring Station at Hawaii, which gives us like 10 hours warning. And even then, it's going to hit like California and other places, and we'll have a rough idea of how bad it's going to be many hours before it gets here. So we have a lot of warning in most cases, but just in case, it's something to be aware of as a potential danger. And these stand out as the actual dangers people need to worry about. The other thing that has come up a lot recently, because this is the rainy season, and this incoming storm, like it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and my house lights are on because it is so dark outside, and I can hear the storm in the distance. My dog's been nervous for hours, and I just love this time of year. So many people are like, oh, I don't want to come during rainy season. I want to be able to see stuff. And honestly, I get that. Like, it's so much easier to drive around the country when it's not raining. It's so much easier to see the sights. It's so much easier to plan, and some people just like sitting out in the sun all day, but I love rainy season here. For me, this is the best time of year. It's cooler. The rain is interesting. I love the sound. I love the dynamicism of the storms and all that. So I'm a pluviophile, but I really like this. Like, it's a fantastic time of year, and I love the gray skies. Like, it's so nice to be outside. Like, not only is it super comfortable right now, but like the sound is great, the look is great, the colors are great. It's just everything pops, right? I don't have a polarizing filter on today. You can see just how beautiful the colors are when the rain is coming. So we have this powerful rain, and it comes for 6 months of the year, and especially around this time or in October, it is just intense. It's not just the rainy season, it is we're full on in the monsoon season. These are true monsoons. This is not a pseudo fake faux monsoon. We're a true monsoon country. So this is the real monsoons we're getting. And when we talk about flooding here, these are monsoon floods. So these are generally not traditional flash floods. This is not the same style as flooding as you generally experience in, say, the United States. It could be very similar in some cases, but in general, you have a different style of flooding. We have a slightly less flash floody, but still quite rapid uptick in how the rain is handled. But because we get it nearly every day, it is not a complete surprise. Like, you see where the water goes every day. You know how the water behaves every day. Some days are a little bit harder than others, but you have a general feel for it, and most of the cities are designed for the streets to funnel it, and they have for hundreds of years. This is not a new weather phenomenon. So we are used to dealing with large amounts of water, and this does create some problems for the country. Of course, dealing with all that water all the time is something that is difficult, and one of the things that people talk about a lot and don't realize that it's caused heavily by this is the trash problems. And it's monsoon rains suddenly grab all the trash that are on the streets, even things that aren't on the street. They put it onto the street, they rip it open, they wipe it through the streets, wash it down into the washes, and then the low areas, the washes, suddenly will be full of trash. And it's not people throwing trash in there most of the time, it's that it's being flooded in from all over the city. The problem is then once you have all that trash in there, then people go, why would I not just throw trash in there? It's a giant trash pile, right? So at that point, what difference does it make? And they're correct. Like, it doesn't make any difference if they throw a sandwich bag into a 10-foot deep pile of trash that is accumulated from the entire city. So, but it is a major problem that there isn't an easy way to deal with. People often want to throw simple solutions out there like, why don't you just use plastic bags, or why don't you collect it? They do. They're in plastic bags. The truck is going around, but the truck can't beat the rain every single day, and not every bag can stop it from being ripped open by dogs, and not everything is going to make it in. It is not simple, and it needs to be considered that you're talking about how do you deal with monsoon storms in a hilly environment. So what we often see here in Leon, worse in Managua, water comes flooding down the mountainside of Managua and concentrates in downtown. Here we don't have that, but we have old colonial streets that fill up with water. So you'll see often in videos we have high sidewalks. The water will often fill to the top of the sidewalk. Often the sidewalk is there at the level that the flood water goes to on a regular basis, and sometimes it goes into the houses. That can happen. So these are things you need to be aware of, but I don't think they're things you have to be concerned about, right? These houses have been here for hundreds of years. Your house is not going to be swept away. So as an expat, this isn't a fear, but it is an annoyance, right? Water might come into your house because you're in the colonial. Out where I am, we have no risk at all, right? We've had the heaviest rains. We've been here during hurricanes. We've been here during monsoons. At no point do we ever get water anywhere except like the roof is leaking, or, it splashes in from windowsills because the wind's blowing or whatever. But we don't get rain in the house. Flooding doesn't, at no point does my yard actually flood. Everything's designed with great drainage, and it all goes right down into the river behind. So there's areas that don't have to worry about this, but in the colonial city center, there's just no way to deal with that much water. And so the houses, if you're going to have a colonial house in that part of the city, you have a risk that there's going to be water in the house. And the houses are built to take this. So the houses are okay, but if you have electronics on the floor or you have furniture that isn't high, those things can be damaged. So you have to think about that stuff and live a little bit differently if you want to be in those expensive colonial historic houses. One of the many reasons why I wouldn't be interested in them, and I recommend generally they're not the thing that makes sense for most people. If that's really what you want, you can make it work. And again, these things have stood the test of time, but they carry these annoyances with them. And now the dangers are, though, that the streets do turn into rivers. And in the United States, we often use that expression lightly. And if you're from like Texas, you don't, right? Houston really does turn into rivers. The whole place turns into part of the ocean. But if you're in most places, we say, oh, the streets are like a river. We just mean that there's more water than there is asphalt and you can't see the road. Here, we actually mean that there could be up to 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet of rapidly flowing black water going through the streets. And that's dangerous because of what's in the water, right? You could have parasites, you could have infections, viruses, any number of things, because there's a lot of trash and animal feces in there, hopefully just animal feces in there, but that's not super awesome. Once it's been doing it for a while, it gets pretty clean, but for the first hour or so, it's definitely super dirty, and that current can be very, very strong. For someone like me, generally not a risk, but if I walk through the streets during a storm, I will have people screaming at me from windows, like, get out of the street, it's not safe, you need to not be there. They're not worried about there being like alligators in the water or anything like that, but they are worried about me getting an infection. They're worried about me getting washed away, and that's the bigger fear, is that, and we really see this with children, that sometimes children, because, this is a culture that lets children wander around on their own quite often. At get quite young ages, 6, 7, 8 years old, you might be sent off to school on your own because community is safe. The whole community is watching out for the child. You're not worried about an abduction or anything like that. This is not the United States. We don't have those fears. But you do have this problem that if a storm suddenly comes up, someone can be washed away. They may not know what to do. They may get trapped somewhere. They may not just be in the right position. We just had a very unfortunate death I was told about on the live stream last night, that a girl was hit by a splash from a truck going down the street. It hit a big water puddle. That hit her, knocked her off balance, and she fell and was swept by the flood waters. When I first moved here, a boy was swept into the river off of one of the bridges. The water can come up over the bridges, and of course things get slippery, and anywhere you can be caught in the water as it flows, and it can seem like quite some distance when you're crossing a road, but when you realize it's only 2 blocks away to a bridge that goes down into a 30-foot drop into a river that's 30 feet deep and flowing with trash and black water, very, very heavy rapids because it's a flood. You suddenly realize, ooh, if I was to lose my footing and slip, I might not Well, probably could, but there's a real possibility that I wouldn't regain my footing until it was too late, right? 2 blocks in a rushing river is feasible that I would be turned over and maybe knocked unconscious or disoriented enough and end up going in. Not very likely, but an actual risk. And children, you can imagine, so much more risky. I'm a big guy with a strong footing, right? Now, ignoring the fact that I fell over and destroyed my knee a year ago. Besides that, and I still have a horrible scar from that, right? It's been 1 year and it still looks like it just happened. But that's a real risk. So when you're talking about flooding risks here, generally for expats, I've never known an expat that was actually impacted in any significant way by the flooding. We actually find it really interesting, right? My kids love driving through the streets when they're up to the doors of the cars, that we put cameras out the windows and they're like, it's like a ride in Disney World, right? They actually say that. It's really cool looking and we don't feel any fear because there's nothing we're doing that's really going to put us in danger. But it's really easy for someone, especially who's on foot, who's young, who's disoriented, who doesn't know what to do, who's trapped somewhere, doesn't have any money to take a taxi, doesn't have somewhere to go in. Often we would just duck into a store or something, that they could be exposed in a dangerous way. So as expats, basically the flooding never affects us. Even if you're up in Matagalpa, where you have hillsides right there, generally it's not going to impact you. So the type of flooding we have here, while common and monsoon, and can be dangerous, especially for those who are young and in vulnerable communities, for expats, you know, if you're buying a farm and trying to, you know, work out your irrigation, that could be a financial fear. But from oh no, there's flooding and it's going to dangerously impact my life, no, generally not. What's really going to impact your life is that there's a monsoon rain. So how often would you decide to go out during a monsoon? It doesn't come in a flash, right? We have hours of warning, and we know what time it is. It's the same every day. Am I going to go somewhere where I'm going to be vulnerable during a storm? No, I'm not going to do that, right? I'm just going to very logically avoid those situations. It's very easy to stay away from. It's not going to happen. What does catch us is sometimes we decide to go shopping in the rain. We go to the grocery store. Janet laughs about this, and my kids, it's like every time we go to the grocery store, a huge rain starts, and when we come out, the water's up to the doors of the grocery store. We're not worried at all about being swept away in the river. It's, you know, very slowly moving water. There's pressure, but it's not going to knock you off your feet, and it's certainly not going to sweep you away. But it is up to your calves, and it's gross, and it's cold, and you don't really want to step into it, and you definitely don't want to fall over. While you may not die, you would definitely be unpleasant to an extreme degree, and you're probably drenched in rain while doing so, and getting any place fast is very hard because you're fighting through very deep water that's flowing, and so you're hoping a taxi picks you up, but how do you even step off the sidewalk to get into one? You can't. It's all awful when you have to walk through it like that. And I recently did a video where it was just raining for a few minutes, and you can see how much water was on the street that Marcela and I was walking through on our announcement for the video game event that's going on this Sunday at the baseball stadium here in Leon. If you haven't watched that video, definitely go do it, and definitely come out on the 19th to be with us here and join us at the baseball stadium for that video game event at 9:30 in the morning and going all day. It'll be a lot of fun, and Marcela's going to be selling hot dogs, so stop by, get a drink and a hot dog from her too. But also, you could see just how much rain was coming down, and that was just a few minutes. Imagine if it was a heavy rain instead of a light rain, and 20 minutes instead of 5 minutes, right? It would be really, really strong water. So the situations that we end up in as expats just don't put us at risk. Like, no one is ever at risk for that. The beaches are not at risk. It's just it makes life less convenient. But even then, you could fight through it, just put up with it in almost all cases. So it's important to understand that this is part of the lifestyle here, is this constant flooding. And there are situations where you hear about people dying on a regular basis. When you have constant flooding, people are constantly doing dangerous things. Someone tried to ride a motorcycle somewhere this morning and was swept away by one of the rivers, right? But he was crossing a river on a motorcycle, fell over and didn't make it, right? Those are things you can avoid doing very easily. So the nature of not being forced to go out and be in dangerous situations as an expat lets us just naturally not even be affected by these things in a negative way. And it's unfortunate that so many Nicaraguans might be, but for us, this is not a thing to fear when you're considering moving to the country. Just be aware that it's going to be part of your lifestyle, that we don't think anything of it, right? There's going to be a big storm. I'm not going to go out and hang out downtown during the rainstorm. I also know that my food delivery might be delayed, or they may shut down food delivery because they don't want their motorcycle delivery guys out in the storm because there is some flood water, or they'll pause it for a few hours waiting for the water to subside. That's just a normal part of life. We stop thinking about it, and it is a thing that really happens. So yeah, it's an important thing to just be aware of and have in your mind, but I don't think it's going to negatively impact you, and definitely shouldn't be something in 99% of cases that would stop you from coming here, but you also can't choose a part of the country that doesn't have it. We're a monsoon country, so everywhere has slightly different flooding, but none of them are super dangerous. And definitely, if you're looking for what is the worst, to the best of my knowledge, nothing comes close to the poorer barrios in Managua as far as the danger from the flooding. That's where all the worst things happen, but also it's where the worst situations leading to the flooding would happen, right? Children on their own, no oversight in a big city. Floods change a lot. No one's looking out for them. You know, it's just many more people to be affected. If you're in normal expat areas of Managua, you're really going to see very minor flooding. So the natural lifestyle stuff tends to make it safe for those of us who tend to live on higher ground, have nicer houses and so forth. So important to be aware, but also important to keep it within context that it is not something to be afraid of. It is not going to make you not want to live here. It is not going to put you in danger. It is not going to be this big thing, and you will very quickly get used to, oh yeah, afternoon rains around this time. Just plan on not driving around at that time, or take a taxi and not have to worry about it. Just be prepared to stay in a restaurant longer, shop a little bit longer, or get your feet wet. The biggest thing is just planning to have an umbrella. Maybe, I don't even bother with that. I do wear a hat. I just have sandals so you don't care if you're getting wet. Don't wear long jeans. Don't wear socks, don't wear nice shoes, go out in sandals and shorts, and you're generally protected. And yeah, your feet might get dirty, just wash them off when you get home. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ScottAllenMiller. Giving me a like does help. Watching another video helps. Coming out to the event on Sunday was just a lot of fun, so come out and join us on the 19th, and I will see all of you tomorrow.